Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the webinar SFDR and Impact. I'm Stephanie Smialowski, EVPA's Policy and EU Partnerships Associate, and I'm happy to kick off this webinar by sharing some insights on today's topic and giving you a quick overview of the connection of SFDR and Impact before we start the discussion. And then our esteemed speakers will dive into the specific topics, but now we will have just a general overview. As many of you know, the EU Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation, so the SFDR, entered into force in March 2021, and it mandates financial advisors and financial market participants, such as asset managers, banks, insurers, pension schemes, to report on the extent to which they integrate sustainability considerations at the entity and product levels. The aim of SFDR is to accelerate investments towards the EU green transition and sustainability goals by providing investors with transparent and comparable sustainability information, enabling informed investment choices while preventing greenwashing. The SFDR is a pioneering regulation, and it is also a source of inspiration globally. However, it's necessary to acknowledge that financial market participants, and in specific impact asset managers, have faced important challenges in the implementation of the legislation. Social impact asset managers play a crucial role in the European Union's sustainability goals, and they also comply with the requirements under the SFDR. However, their investment strategies and objectives differ from traditional sustainable actors. While impact investing has become very popular, the risks of impact washing and social washing remain overlooked. Recognizing the distinctions between these different financial actors is essential.
I'll finish what I have in hand, and then I'll jump.
Can you mute yourself? Okay, sorry. As I was saying, while recognizing the distinction between different financial actors is essential to increase the mobilization of capital to the social economy and to foster systemic change. According to EVPA's recent market sizing exercise, venture capital and private equity impact funds account for 36% of finance providers to social enterprises, highlighting their significant role in the social economy. So failing to recognize these funds with authentic positive social impact could exacerbate the existing funding gap in the space, which is estimated at nearly 1 billion euros per year across Europe, as stated in the EU Social Economy Action Plan. So considering all these pressing concerns, our goal today is to take stock of the 2 years of SFDR's implementation and its implications to the social impact sector and the broader social economy. In doing so, we aim to brainstorm the next steps to enhance the legislation and ensure the preservation of social impact. As the European Commission has committed to evaluating the regulation's implementation in 2023, this makes our discussion even more timely and pertinent. In order to gather your valuable insights and experiences on SFDR, EVPA is conducting a survey. So your participation in the survey will contribute to the collective understanding of the topic and play a vital role in shaping the future of SFDR for social impact. So to take part in the survey and make your voice heard, please check our chat box where you can find the link for the survey, and we greatly appreciate your contribution and we look forward to it. Furthermore, as we delve into our discussion today, I want to understand a bit more our audience and who is here today to ensure that our discourse reflects the different experiences in here. So I'll launch a quick poll of 2 questions just to understand a bit more who is here. So launching it now. Please answer these 2 questions. Who are you? And what is your product category under the SFDR? I'll give you 1 minute, 1 minute and a half. Oh, great, a lot of answers already. Great, very diverse audience, it seems. Okay, I think everyone has voted or is still voting. Great, we have a very diverse group here. We have NGOs, academia, social enterprise, public authorities, impact investors, impact asset managers, and others. I think the discussion of today is really relevant to all different groups, as we're gonna have a critical discussion on the topic. We have here some asset managers with Article 9 products apparently, and Article 8, great. And some still haven't replied. Okay, still have to report under SFDR. Okay, we are gonna share the results of the poll as well with the participants at the end. And I'm gonna close the poll. And now introduce our speakers. Today we are privileged to have a distinguished panel of speakers who will provide different viewpoints on the EU Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation and its implications to the impact space. So we have joining us Maha Keramani, the head of Positive Impact Business Accelerator at the BNP Paribas, offering her insights from an impact practitioner. We are also honored to have Emiliano Giovini, the president of GAO Europe, the Global Alliance for Impact Lawyers, sharing his legal expertise. And from the policymakers' perspective, we have here today Elena Arveras, the legal officer at the European Commission's DG FISMA. And finally, guiding this discussion is our moderator, Alessia Giannoncelli, EVPA's Director of Knowledge and Programs. After this discussion, you have the chance to ask your questions to the panel speakers. And now, without further ado, I'm glad to give the floor to Alessia, our Director of Knowledge and Programs.
Thank you, Stephanie, for the introduction, and welcome everyone. I see lots of people connected, which is good. And also, as Steph said, a variety of people interested in the topic. So I would like to start with asking questions to our panelists. And of course, I think that the first question should go to Elena from DG FISMA European Commission, so that she can give us her insights starting from the Commission. So Elena, reflecting on the 2-year period since the enforcement of SFDR, how does the European Commission evaluate the implementation of this regulation to date? And also maybe a follow-up question, it would be great if you could also elaborate on the positive developments, but also the challenges you have observed during this time. So Elena, over to you, and thank you once more for being here with us today.
Thank you, Alessia. Well, I mean, first of all, I think we need to keep in mind that when this regulation was adopted in 2020, well, a bit earlier in 2021, but entered into application in 2021, it was the first regulation that ever put into rules all these disclosures to the financial sector. So that had a very big impact on the industry, in our view, and on the behavior of the different actors. Now, it's true that even if the regulation started applying in 2021, the RTSs have just kicked in January, some parts in February, and actually some parts not yet, because they will kick in this month. So it's true that in our view, it's a bit too early to draw definitive conclusions on the regulation or to assess how the implementation or how successful the implementation has been. We've seen some reports, for example, by Morningstar on the developments of Articles 8 and 9 and the increases in the last year, for instance. So I think it's clear that there is a certain appetite for sustainable investing, let's put it this way. However, and by saying this, I've already touched upon I guess, the key point of the regulation. The regulation is being used differently as it was supposed to be used, as you know. So this misuse of the rules as labels has also created some tensions and some issues that I'm sure we'll discuss in the course of today. And maybe those are what I would call the challenges of the regulation, because I think the original intention was very good and very important to enhance the transparency, to be able to capture as many products as possible that were making any kind of claim, because in the end it would increase a lot the transparency in the market. But given the misuse of the regulation, now it's having the counter effect. And I think that different stakeholder groups are worried about the same issue from different angles. So it doesn't matter if you talk about supervisors, NGOs, industry, everyone is afraid of the same, either from the point of view of reputational risk, not sure how to enforce the regulation, or risk of greenwashing from the side maybe of civil society that is concerned or expects things differently when a certain product is offered as sustainable. So I think in summary, the impact of the regulation has been positive, because again, it was new in its class, and it's the first regulation in any jurisdiction that has done this, and that has had a very, very positive impact. But I think we acknowledge that there are certain shortcomings, and we're looking into this. Maybe I can elaborate a bit later on. And overall, in general, still we like that everyone is also so involved in the process and so much looking to contribute to improve the framework in any way possible.
Thank you so much, Elena. And I think it was good to highlight the fact that that the regulation itself, it has an impact, but of course also good to know and to hear from the voice of the Commission that the problem with the misuse, I mean, being instead of a transparency regulation, really a labor regulation that was not intended. So thank you. And I would like now to continue with Emiliano. As Stephanie said, Emiliano is from Gale, so this is the first time that we felt the need of engaging more with a community of lawyers, especially on topics such as regulations, because we really believe that bringing in this legal perspective will help us and the sector moving forward. So, Emiliano, from your experience as an impact lawyer, what is your assessment of SFDR's legal provisions, particularly focusing on the product category for sustainable investments I outlined in Article 9? And also follow-up question, in your legal analysis, what potential consequences do you foresee for impact funds as a result of these provisions? Over to you, Emiliano, and thank you once more for being here with us.
Thank you very much, Alessia, and I'm really delighted to be part of this panel and representing Gale for this occasion. Well, the question is very challenging as the whole regulation is, and I would like to highlight the fact that what Elena just mentioned, there was like I would say an up and down trend when it first came into force, because there was a initial perception of what it was meant to be, like a disclosure-based regulation that, like, by doing and by Q&As, consultations, it was, as Elena said, like one of the most active and comprehensive efforts also by different sides of the community. So in a very participatory experiment, which is absolutely the positive side of it. But it turned in a way into, but it now shares features with product standard labeling regime, which are like not very well framed because they're not included explicitly in the regulations, and so now they're generating misunderstanding, uncertainty, and there's one fact that is actually quite outstanding in this respect, which is what we witnessed with level 2 of SFDR, that many funds which were initially, let's say, qualified and labeled as Article 9 decided to downgrade to Article 8, which is like, I would see it as a twofold experience. In one sense, now that we have the first set of regulatory technical standards, and the principal adverse impacts are also in constant development, we have a better consciousness of who should actually be enabled to stay within Article 9, but also on the other hand, we have a level of uncertainty which we need to work on, because if we generate uncertainty, the whole scope of the regulation, which is of course a matter of transparency, but also of enabling constant improvement of the financial sector towards a more impactful, let's say, perspective and approach, run the risk of being undermined. And so I would say that there are a few issues that are particularly triggering in the current situation, which is a matter of definition, because what is like sustainable investment according to Article 2.17 of SFDR needs to be in a way compared and managed to what is taxonomy aligned, so with the definition of Article 3. And I think that the space for further definition and harmonization, then it's there to be taken. I would not. I would close this first remark with a positive attitude. I don't see there's a need of let's say reshaping of the whole regulation from scratch. I think the path is well marked, but also it needs to be integrated and harmonized with further regulations and directives which came out or are about to be implemented to have the whole framework effective and working for the scope.
Thank you so much, Emiliano, and also thank you for the mention to this downgrade of impact funds that were sustainable funds that were before Article 9 and then decided to move to Article 8. Definitely super interesting. Also, I think it brings up all the discussions that we're having, all the challenges, and I think that this is a sign of really a learning by doing exercise. So there was the regulation, and now we are learning more and more on how to tackle the different challenges. And on that, I'll give the floor to Maha. Maha was with us already at the Impact Week last year, discussing from a practitioner point of view this regulation. Maha also joined CVPA board last week, so it's a pleasure to have you here again with us discussing about this topic. So as an impact practitioner, could you share your experience in applying the SFDR rules? And also, we would be interested in hearing your views on the potential implications that SFDR can have on impact funds and on the broader social economy. Maha.
Thank you, Alessia. Hello to everyone. Happy to be here. Yes, indeed. So I share the views of Elena and Emiliano on the fact that it's a quite groundbreaking regulation. It's the first one. It's a very positive step to have the European regulation wanting to to address this topic and having a really strong and voluntary assignment on these topics. The only maybe thing that we could see as a practitioner is that SFDR, but maybe it's because it wasn't it. I think there was a very big hope or expectation that this regulation would actually, be able to classify and to give visibility and legibility on what is impact. And the fact that ESG, sustainability, impact, responsibility, I think there was an expectation on the fact that this regulation would bring this clarification that the market is quite struggling in having. And it didn't quite really, because it's not the, maybe it's not the prism that it took the thing to be more transparent, and for that it has definitely reached its goal, because it really pushes for more transparency. It really pushes to ask maybe quite basic ESG and sustainability questions that probably weren't addressed in a systematic way, and now have to be addressed in a systematic way. But for impact practitioners, at least from my point of view, maybe for impact practitioners, there was this expectation that was not filled, because there was no dedicated framework for impact and how to actually disclose specifically on impact products, on positive impact, because it's a lot oriented on do no significant harm, with things that are very much relevant for all that is listed assets and big companies and big corporates. But for maybe social enterprises or social or impact entrepreneurs, it's quite, when you see the 14 PASIs that must be filled in to be SFDR 9, it's quite difficult to how you say, but to reflect one's activity in that. So we have a little bit of struggle when we need to fill these PASIs for impact companies, because there's a lot that is maybe just not relevant for them, because they have the objective of having a positive impact, and here we only have the potential negative impacts that they have. And maybe also what is complicated is that there is no indication of ranges, because for most of the companies, for example, that we finance, most of the PASIs could be non-significant. You know, when you're a service provider of health, maybe for, you know, a service provider for elderly people, and you help elderly people to stay at home instead of going to care and to be able to be autonomous at their home. Well, there is no hazardous waste ratio, there is no emissions to water, there is no GHG intensity, there is no greenhouse or very little greenhouse emission. So it seems just like it's not adapted to an activity, a social or environmental positive activity. That's what I would say. And then there's also little on the social aspects, which is very difficult. It's quite difficult to have more, you know, standards on social aspects. But again, the fact that it's limited to maybe gender at the board, or gender equality at the board, or no violations of human rights, it seems again not adapted. It's adapted for big corporate with have activities in countries where the legal laws are not as stringent as in Europe, but it's for small associations or companies that you know have a impact activity local nationally. It's, you know, it's not relevant, and there's this frustration maybe to not be able to disclose on all the positive effects. So this is something that is, you know, on more the negative effects, but we should be able to disclose on there is a positive effect, there is employment created, there is maybe GHG emission avoided, and not just GHG emission that are negative. So this is the main, you know, return that I would have on this.
Thank you so much, Maha, for elaborating on the challenges that you've seen, and also share the fact that there were high expectations maybe going in another direction, but I think we can say as a VPA, lots of practitioners and impact funds share the same concerns. So I think here you're really representing the voice of our ecosystem, which has actually characteristics that are very proper to it. So since we now have taken stock of what was the first moment for the regulation, I would like now to look forward and taking and following up from what Ma was saying. So what is needed now? So I go now to Emiliano again. So I would like to understand from you, in your view, which specific legal revisions could help create an enabling environment to impact funds within the SFDR.
Yeah, thank you, Alessia. And I have to say that Maha's comment really reflects many of the concerns that I'm receiving in my daily work and also among colleagues and within our community. There's a feeling of let's say false certainty or safeguard washing for the current let's say categorizations of products among which the purely impact-driven funds investors feel a bit lost. You know, they don't. It's hard to find the right spot and the right indicators for their funds and for their investments, but also to find a way to provide evidence of what is the impact, especially the social impact generated through their investment, and you know that of course entails a lot how their investees are able to provide this evidence. So of course the recipe for the way forward is absolutely complex, and I don't have one strong answer to this, but I see that as I was saying before, since the first year when the regulation was implemented, other CSRD came out and other regulations are about to appear, which are in a way providing new tools. And I'm thinking about, for example, the sustainable reporting standards of the CSRD, which I read in the last consultations, which was launched by the supervising authorities, could be used as a tool for integrating, extending the list of social indicators for parties, which would be an example, maybe, I mean, to be tested and in line with what I see from a legal perspective as an harmonized, comprehensive approach. Because the biggest mistake we could do in front of this complex, fragmented, and still to be, let's say, fine-tuned framework is to, let's say, focus too strictly on one or the other side, because the overall framework is meant to cover, if we think about the due diligence obligation which will come into force hopefully in a couple of years, we will have, you know, from a disclosure to a due diligence set of obligation which will need and which will enable the whole chain to be fully covered. In that respect, I also very much encourage the ESMA's recent guidelines on which propose the introduction of minimum thresholds for defining and categorizing products which could be labeled as ESG related, sustainable, and hopefully as impact, which is still lacking. Which is because this is a matter of fact. The current articles and the current definitions have even generating an informal 8+ set of products, which is not defined yet. So which I again see as a positive sign from the market, because the market is in a way active to shape and interpret the regulation. On the other hand, these inputs which we receive from the markets and from the supervising authorities at a certain point, which will soon happen, as also Elena was mentioning, should be, let's say, conveyed in a sort of a fine tuning, so that also impact funds and impact investors can find and can feel comfortable in fitting in what is now, and I would say, a too broad and uncertain definition of sustainable investments. Like even regarding the approach that is like, on one side we have a disclosure-based framework, which not always fit with, let's say, the pie-based do not significant harm criteria, which are especially if we think about like passive funds, which are invest in companies in transition, which still have a lot of fossil fuels and other, let's say, sectors at risk. This is another thing to be taken into consideration, considering that pie indicators are sector agnostic at the moment. So also, let's say, a stronger and a stricter focus on not focus, but like adaptation to depending on the sector would also help in a way defining some subcategories into which each one can find itself, let's say, well represented and able to express what they really do.
Thank you, Emiliano, for all the insights and the suggestions, and with always this aim of making impact funds more comfortable in applying the regulation. I think it's a good starting point when it comes to what's next. And this is why I re-give the floor to Maha, so she can build on what you just said. So Maha, what specific measures do you think regulators can implement to foster an environment that supports specifically impact funds within this framework and this regulation?
So I a little bit said in the beginning, but just maybe something that would be that would reflect positive impacts and not just negative ones. Maybe having also, because here we have more sustainability criteria, well, making the difference between, okay, you have sustainability criteria and they have to be applied by most of the funds, but for impact funds, you also have impact criteria that can be valued and that can have that can be disclosed, which are more relevant, maybe having something of a what is more relevant considering what type of fund you have, and probably having something that is more adapted to social also actors, socially driven actors, when there is something about job creation, for example, or disability management, or education, or something that is maybe more adapted to companies, impact driven. I like the impact driven pure players, I would say. So having this framework could be useful, and also maybe what could be useful is having ranges of when we consider that PASIs are not significant, because here it's a disclosure, so it's a number that we have to fill in at some point. Isn't there maybe a threshold under which it's not just not relevant to have it, that could maybe lighten the burden of disclosure of the different service providers that we could have, impact companies that we have, that, you know, for them it's quite a burden to have to fill you know, each number. Sometimes well, yeah, they have it, but they just don't have it so precisely, and maybe having a threshold under which it wouldn't be so relevant to disclose that could be also interesting and helpful. And maybe also, I don't know how all this framework, well, you EVPA have this exchange with the commission and practitioners, and maybe it would be also helpful to have more of these forums, maybe to have I don't know if it's a hotline, but you see that's what I mean, but maybe some place where questions could be asked when we have doubts, like saying, okay, here we don't exactly know what what we should put. Is this acceptable, not acceptable? It's difficult to have, you know, a regulation that impose, but again, I think it's very good to have one. Huh? It's so this there is no but also to have like a kind of possible hotline or feedback possibilities of exchanging, and maybe you know, having to leverage doubts or things like that. That would also be, or having maybe best practices also, have how the European Commission has maybe gathered some best practices that people that have done it well, or as expected at least, and so to have a little bit of guideline also to apply.
Thank you, Maha.
Thank you.
And also for the suggestion for VPA. This is the aim actually of all our policy work. So we will try to continue to doing, especially on SFDR. So as we said, the survey is the first step, this webinar is the second step, and then there will be plenty of occasions in which we will really try to raise the voice and the concerns of the community towards Commission. Elena is here today, but she will she will be in touch with us in the next months. And also, Maha, again, to thank you again for reinforcing this switch from negative reporting on negative to reporting on positive impacts, because this is again the essence of what the impact funds within our community do. And also you mentioned earlier the differences between listed assets that can have certain indicators and the facility to report on something, whereas the social enterprises that are typically the recipient of the funding of our own community might struggle. So all good suggestions, and this is why I'm now happy to give the floor for the last question and comment to Elena, since we are lucky to have Commission here, being able to react to everything that we have shared from a practitioner and legal point of view. So Elena, Commissioner McGuinness mentioned in one of her speeches last December that EC would conduct a comprehensive assessment of SFDR's implementation in 2023. So what are the upcoming actions for this evaluation, and what potential outcomes can we expect from it? And also, how can the impact community offer support during this process? So we are very happy to hear from you, and also to explain our community what we can do as networks, as practitioners, as lawyers to support you in this assessment. Over to you, Elena.
Thank you, Alessia. So basically, we're indeed in the middle of the process of assessing the SFDR. We had many bilaterals with industry and different stakeholder groups in the first quarter of the year, and we are now preparing a consultation paper that will be published in September. So the idea is to have a 3-month public consultation that would run in the autumn. And I think this would be a very good opportunity for you to share your thoughts. The idea, but again, this is work ongoing, so nothing definitive yet. The idea is to ask a bit about the problems of the regulation, if any, as it is today, to ask also about the interactions with other pieces of sustainable finance legislation, and then also to focus a bit on potential ways of resolving the issues. So with a bit of a more forward-looking perspective, if you like. Again, the idea here is to gather as much feedback as we can from everyone as to where things stand now. I think we are in the privileged position that we have a little bit of time to work properly in any possible potential future suggestion that we would put on the table when the next commission takes office. So we're really trying to use that time. And as I say, the outcome of the exercise is, of course, not determined, because at this moment, what we are doing is an assessment. That doesn't mean that we are going to propose a revision. again, it's very unlikely that this happens under this commission, because basically we would be committing someone else to continue our work. But in any case, the work will advance, which is what matters to us. So a bit more in terms of the process and the activities. In parallel to the consultation, we'll also carry out some workshops, some roundtables to look a bit more in detail into some of the technical aspects, which we'll probably need to dig further into. So this will happen a bit in parallel in the autumn, maybe also at the beginning of next year. And then indeed, we would be a bit ready with some kind of conclusions, again, to be seen how much detail those conclusions give. But in any case, as I say, the input for future work will be there, which is really what counts to us. Also, for those workshops, roundtables, we'll keep in mind this impact community in a way, of course, because it's an important angle. So I'm sure we'll contact some of you at some point to see if you want to participate in any of those discussions. And I think both via those discussions and via the consultations, you would already be supporting the process greatly. So it's a quite comprehensive approach that we're trying to take here, because as I say, the idea is not to look at the SFDR in isolation, but really look at the whole sustainable finance framework with a big focus on the usability of the framework as well, and coherence. So in this regard, we'll try to cover all topics that stakeholders would expect us to cover in those questions. And then we'll look into the replies with a lot of attention. So I leave it here in case there are questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elena. This is very promising, and as said, we will make sure that the voice of the community is well transferred to you. All the support that we can give you to make sure that challenges will be addressed by the Commission. Count on us. And maybe we have received few questions, but something that we didn't touch today that might be useful to discuss, let's say. It's a question to all, but I don't know then, Elena, if you want to start from a Commission point of view. There is a question on social taxonomy. So another debated topic. I don't want to call it controversial, but for sure debated. The question is, would you see an added value in the social taxonomy to address some of the challenges that we have just discussed linked to SFDR? I don't know, Elena, if you want to start, and then Emiliano, Maha, from your point of view, considering the fact that, yeah, we probably are in a stage where a real social taxonomy is not in place yet. So, Elena, yeah.
Thank you, Alessia. Well, I think here is really my personal view, nothing in the representation of the Commission at all. I think it could help because, of course, you would have kind of a reference point like we have for the green taxonomy. But I also understand the challenges associated to it. Like I also understand the challenges associated to the green taxonomy. There's still a lot of activities that aren't covered by the taxonomy, and that doesn't mean that they contribute to a transition to a more sustainable economy. So I think the taxonomy indeed is very helpful to be kind of the reference point, but it's not the only tool that we have in the sustainable finance framework. So both for the green and the social taxonomy, I think we all need to keep this in mind. We've also from the Commission tried to communicate a lot about this, even about ways of using the taxonomy without necessarily having to be taxonomy aligned in a way. And this would apply as well for the social aspects. So I think it could help, but I'm also a bit afraid always of, let's say, going for the theoretical best solution that maybe in practice is not that well implementable in a way. So there are different views about this, and probably for a reason. If it was a straightforward thing, it would already have been done. So yeah, I'm afraid it's indeed a complicated topic, a bit sensitive at times, but it could help, but let's not also over rely on that to make everything else work, because I mean, I'm sure there are other ways.
Thank you so much, Elena, also for sharing your own perspective super interesting and useful. Emiliano.
Yeah, also on this side of the table, I would share my view, which is like, yeah, I think it flanks pretty much what Elena just said. I have the feeling, I mean, this social leg of the framework is, in a way, it is still lacking, but we should not, let's say, wait for it to be perfectly shaped and keep on working without it, because it's definitely the backbone on impact economy and social entrepreneurships, and it represents actually most of the let's say actors that I think present here as an audience, but also of the actors that we normally work with, which is that means that probably the criteria out of which the so-called social taxonomy would be shaped needs to be different from the green one, which is because it's by definition are not so well listable in a sort of a strict number of issues with indicators that are so well applicable. So it's I think it needs to be we need to find criteria which of course need to be adaptive and more flexible than other criteria that are currently set for greenhouse gases or other typically environmental issues. But it's definitely something we should not shy away because it's too difficult and it's controversial in a way. So it's I would very much encourage and happy to, let's say, participate. I'm sure Gail would be happy to join a discussion on how to in a way reshape also the approach for identifying a way to tackle the social challenges and the way the actors of the financial markets are able to map them and generate positive impact for them.
Thank you, Emiliano. Ma, over to you. Yes, indeed.
Yes, thank you. Just maybe 2 words. I think that it's crucial to have it because as it is, there is inequality between how we treat environment and how we treat social, and it gives the impression, the false impression, that environment is more important than social. So I think this is so I agree with Emiliano, even if it's not perfect, even if it's still evolving, it has to evolve because it cannot address everything at once. I think it's very important to give this the strong impression that it's as important as the environment, and there is no discrepancy, because as it is, there is a lot that hide behind the fact that okay, there is no social taxonomy, it means that it's less important, or it means so. I think it's very important, and maybe also a way of, I don't know if it's possible, but a way of also addressing part of it could be just transition aspects within the green taxonomy. And this could be a way of, a quick win, maybe. I don't know if it, of adding at least in the green taxonomy already some just transition criteria that could be a quick win. I don't know. And maybe also, just having some kind of, because there are some initiatives, they are not perfect, they're maybe not exhaustive, I agree, but there are some things, and I quite agree with Emiliano that if we all put ourselves together, I think we could add up with something that fills this very, very, very important lack, I would say.
Thank you so much, the 3 of you. We are getting so many questions, so I'm trying to take the last one, and then we'll try to answer maybe in another format on our webpage on the other questions that were unanswered. So maybe the last one on incentives, since we have discussed about positive impacts versus avoid, avoid harm. So do you think that the current legislation framework does enough to incentivize investments in positive impacts, or those investments that actively invest in transformation and transition, as opposed to sustainability by avoidance? Do you think there is an incentive thanks to this regulation, or still another thing challenging? I don't know, Emiliano, if you want to take this one.
Yeah, I can start. I mean, from a very legal perspective, I would say that it's not sufficiently incentivizing by a matter of, let's say, practical implementation, because it's let's say the overall perspective and feeling of the players of the market. It's still quite, let's say, I would not say reluctant, but a bit cautious. So to step in one or the other side of, depending on how we want to label it in according to the article. So it's I think that it's the real incentivize will be represented also by a framework which will make them feel in a way represented by a certain definition, by certain criteria which they think they fit their characteristics, and also in a way which would in a way protect the pure, I mean, the commitment of those that are ahead compared to the others, which is in terms of sustainability or in terms of impact even more, because at the current moment we have still too broad, let's say, groups of actors which are theoretically fitting within the same definition, depending on how you stretch it from one side or the other, which is definitely not incentivizing in a way by a very practical and pragmatical perspective. But I think that there's no need for real incentives. There's need for, let's say, making the whole, let's say, structure work better in a clearer way.
So Elena, Maha, if you allow me, maybe I go to the last question, and then if you have something to comment also on this one, because I think it's very much related to everything that we have said. So let's talk about the use of labels. Would an EU level label for impact financial products help address the misuse of SFDR as a label? I think we started with that. So Elena, would you mind reflecting on this?
Well, I think that the clear answer is yes, because if what we're saying is that if the market is using the SFDR as a labeling scheme, is because there is a demand for that. So, I mean, we don't want to jump to conclusions, but it's pretty obvious from us what's the situation out there at the moment. So I personally think that if a label was created, then indeed there would be clear underpinning criteria of what can be considered sustainable and what not. And there would be no room for doubt. So the question is indeed how to establish those labels. So how many of them, what strategies are the products that could fall under or could be labeled as such follow, how broad should be, if you like, that impact category that you are referring to. Do everyone understands the same by impact? Probably not. So here also, I think the tricky part is going to be to find out the underpinning criteria to those labels. And also, like I was saying before, to do it in a realistic manner. Because even if one would like to have a very niche category, let's put it this way, that's focused on a certain kind of investments. I'm not going to give details because this is just an example, so I don't want you to get the wrong idea. But my point is, one also needs to see if the market is going to want to use that label, or if it's going to be two products that uses it, because then it's not that useful maybe to divide up so much in such details to specify exactly what's the purpose of that product. And maybe it's better to kind of group things that more or less can fit the same criteria or the same objectives, and that they are understandable to everyone. Because again, if the differences are so technical that maybe only the most experts get it, what's the point? So I think the critical part in our work, and with your help, is going to be to find the underpinning criteria and to find the the categories that make sense. Again, if we get the feedback that indeed these categories are needed, and of course we get the political mandate to look into it. But as I say, for now we are asking about all these questions.
Great. Maha, any final thoughts on that? You're muted, yes.
Hello?
Yes, now you
sorry.
can, yes.
Now on this topic, I couldn't, I don't have any specific things to add. I agree with what Elena was saying.
Okay, so I think that I still have 1 minute to wrap up and close the webinar. I'll start thanking Elena, Emiliano, and Maha for the valuable contributions. We believe bringing a variety of perspectives really helps the debate moving forward. So as I said, we will continue at VPA on the policy side to follow, to receive your insights. There is the link to the survey in the chat. So feel free to share it in your network, to answer, to pass it to all the actors that you think might contribute. We are also available to receive questions, to do interviews. I cannot not thank Stephanie, because apart from introducing the webinar, she was really the person orchestrating everything, putting together briefing, reading everything for the last 2 years. So a big thanks to her. And maybe I would like to say that also on the side of labels, definitions, clarity, as a VPA, we're doing a great job on data. So really what we were saying, the market sizing, so the work that we are doing in collaboration with GSG and the European National Advisory Boards, we believe will help this debate because it will bring clarity. We will help classifying the different impact strategies, really to have an idea of what sustainable finance is, what impact investing is, what impact with additionality is. So we invite you to join our effort and to share your views. We're happy to do it for the first time in collaboration with other actors, academic partners, National Advisory Board and GSG, as I just said. And there will be a survey when you close Zoom, since we are also interested in the impact that we are having. It would be great to understand if you liked the conversation and if you would like to know more. As said, Stephanie, am I missing anything?
No, that's perfect. Thank you, Alessia, and thank you for all the speakers and the participants for the great discussion. And actually the survey, the satisfaction surveys, when you close the Zoom, you're gonna see the questions.
Thank you again, Elena, Emiliano, Maha. It was a pleasure to be with us.
Thank you
Thank you so
much.
much.
Thank you for having us.
Bye-bye.
Bye.